afternoon, everyone. Now it's on. You all are going with me on a trip to Russia and Eastern Europe, which will include Poland and all the three small Baltic countries, and Czech Republic. It's quite a tour. So, I have to stay. You can see the outline of the tour, the trip that we took, our driving area. Around there. Wow. It was a 6-week trip in motorhomes. We flew into Frankfurt, Germany, and the tour company had small motorhomes waiting for all of us. There were 20 paying customers plus some support people. When we came in, we were talking to the Wagner master when we landed in Frankfurt, Germany, and he commenced to tell us that the one couple that was coming in after us, she had just broke her foot before they left for this tour. So she was going to be in a wheelchair. Any of you that knew my husband, he's standing there very quietly, just taking it all in, and waited until they arrived. And then he listened to the same story again. And her husband told him she needs to be pushed. They were photographers, and he would take pictures. So my husband listened, and of course, you know what he did. He said, "I'm pushing the wheelchair, you take the pictures." So for 6 weeks, he was the wheelchair pusher. So as we traveled around, that's what he did. So we started out in Frankfurt, we drove across East Germany, and then across northern Poland. This is Gdansk, Poland. The large church is St. Mary's Cathedral. It's huge. It towers above the rest of the city. It has 3 naves. I'm not sure what that is, but that's the way it's described. It has 3 naves. It's very large. And we were in there on a Sunday afternoon, and the young man that was giving us the tour of the church, quite lengthy, but it was just humongous. And when he got finished, a woman in the tour said, "This is a shame you don't use churches like this anymore." And I thought the young man was almost going to swallow his teeth, and he said to her, "Young woman, this is Poland. We Polish go to church, and this church has already had 3 services today." So they go to church. Also, the street in front of the church. I should have said, this is the largest brick medieval church in Europe, and it was built between 1300 and 1500. That's how long it was in progress. The street in front of the church is very beautiful, and it was set up that day with merchants selling amber, of all things. You can see some of the amber I have up here on the table. There is, well, it's very beautiful. You can look at it and admire it because it's unlike anything you'll find around here. Now, we're coming to Lithuania, Latvia. I thought the other one was first, but I'm gonna. This is called the Field of Crosses. I want to see, okay, that one should have been first.
That's Lithuania, right?
Latvia, I think it's Lithuania, but it could be Latvia. The information that I was reading says it's in Latvia. But anyway, this is the woman my husband was pushing for the 6 weeks. So, as you see, most people think this is a field of little crosses. They're huge. And the communists did not like that they had this field of crosses. And they would come in and bulldoze it every now and then. They would just ruin it. And before you know it, it would be back again. The Lithuanians, Latvians, they were not going to let this happen. And as soon as they would bulldoze it, it would come back pretty soon. And let me see here if I can do this. If you see here, September 11, 2001, someone put the remembrance of the New York terror attack. So that tells you they did not want to be without their God. Most of the people in Lithuania and Latvia are Catholics, so this was important to them, very important. We were in Vilnius, Lithuania on a Sunday afternoon, and the people were out strolling on the streets in their Sunday best. Some of them were just coming from church. And the thing that as we were walking around, the thing I found the most interesting, as we neared the cathedral, I could hear the pipe organ just ringing out, and the choir was singing. I could hear it way out in the street, and I did move in to the door of the cathedral and stood in the foyer. But that's as far as I could get because the ones at the door, they were not letting people in anymore. But it was just gorgeous. Latvia is another very small country right next door to Lithuania. And Riga, the capital of Latvia, sits right on, I shall say, on the coastline. Vilnius in Lithuania is inland. But an interesting fact is they said the year that we were there, the president of both Lithuania, a different one was the president of Latvia. They were both American citizens. You figure that. So, In Latvia, we were walking along a path and there were women with hand-knit sweaters, $25 a piece. And they were beautiful sweaters, so of course we women had to check them out. And most of us ended up buying a sweater. The interesting thing was we walked a little farther down the path and there was a small store which we ducked in because we're nosy. And one of the women that had been selling sweaters, she was in there buying groceries with the money she got from her sweater. So we felt good about buying those sweaters. And that evening, we had a very nice dinner, and after dinner was over, so the women brought out hand-crocheted things, as you'll see over there on the table. I bought a tablecloth. So it was beautiful, and I liked it, and the person that made it earned it. Now, going ahead to Estonia, Tallinn, Estonia. That's Tallinn. You ever seen anything like that? When you approach Estonia from the sea, if you're in a boat, that is what Tallinn looks like. It looks like fairyland to me. But we were there, and there was a woman explaining the music festival grounds. Tallinn in Estonia is known for its musical festivals. They come from different countries around there and have wonderful festivals. And I was curious about what she was selling because I could tell she had something, and I went to check it out, and you'll see it up there. It's a small picture of that. And the second time I was in Tallinn, I could not find anything that looked like that. But it's very different. So from there, we were going to cross over into Russia. Now, we picked up a Lithuanian couple. She was fluent in Russian. She also spoke very good English. And one of the things that she was interested in at that time, 2004 was a presidential election for us. And she would quiz me every chance she got. She'd say, well, what do you hear over there? We don't hear anything over here. And they were very concerned about how this was going to go. 2004, George Bush was president, and he was running for second term. So she helped us fill out the paperwork and get all the things done that needed to be done for us to cross the border into Russia. So now we will go to St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg was the summer home of the Tsar's family. This was the church they worshiped in. I couldn't find the name of it because they have, if I found the name, I probably couldn't pronounce it anyway because don't laugh, Dick, you can pronounce it, because I couldn't. But that was where the Tsar and his family worshiped. St. Petersburg had no single homes. and there were apartment houses, all apartments, and the Hermitage was there, which you want to spend as much time as you can, depending on how much time the tour will give you. You could spend a week in there and not see it all. And outside the Hermitage, there would be peddlers with push carts. I bought a small doll. They were dressed beautifully, very much so. This is called the Blood Church in St. Petersburg. Any of you have any idea why it's called the Blood Church? It's called the Blood Church because around the middle of the 1850s, Nicholas I, who was Tsar at the time, was assassinated there while he was at worship. He had just freed the slaves, all the serfs in Russia. And he had many more changes that he wanted to make and was planning to make. They had at that time, the very elite Russians didn't like Nicholas I. He was too much in tune with the common people, as you can see, because he freed all the serfs, and he had many more things that he wanted to accomplish, and he had papers concerning those things on his body. So, somebody knew he was there, and it was an opportune time for them. So you can see the beauty of the church. It's just a beautiful place, just a beautiful place. One of the other churches in St. Petersburg is St. Isaac's Church. It was a church I went into. I don't have a picture of it. You'd have had to take a picture of the inside. That church, on the inside, all the columns and all the decoration was a malachite. Do you know what malachite looks like? Malachite is green with variations of green coloring in it. And I mean, that was just something to behold as you went in there. So, and let's see. The Hermitage, I did tell you that you needed to spend very quality time in there, and probably would never have enough time to see all you wanted to see. So from St. Petersburg, we traveled out in the country, and we stopped at two ancient churches. I don't have pictures of them. We didn't know what to expect. We stopped and all went in, and when we hit the door, it was light enough to see our jaws. That church had the Bible painted on the walls, on the ceiling, anywhere they could paint the story of the Bible, and all the pictures and the things that we learned as children. But you realize that these churches were built way back, probably 12th, 13th, 14th century. The serfs couldn't read, they couldn't write, but the pictures told the story. The second church we went in, they wanted us to see that one too. It was mosaics instead of paintings. And the pictures told the story. The second church we went in, they wanted us to see that one too. It was mosaics instead of paintings. But the same thing, it was all done in mosaics. One thing I might tell you is that no shorts or sleeveless shirts were allowed in these churches. So, beware. Where we're going now is someplace called the Golden Ring. The Golden Ring in Russia are ancient towns that were established in the 12th century. This was before Moscow was even established. So these towns that are in the Golden Ring are very, very old. And as we drove along the road, there were tea containers set up along the highway, if you can call the roads that we were on highways. But they had these tea containers, and they were of metal, and the best I can describe them, they were of a metal like our mother's coal packers. You know, they were those things we used to coal pack our fruits in jars. That's what these tea containers looked like. We did not stop to have tea, but that's what I observed that they looked like, and best I can describe them. Most of the cottages along the road were either blue or green. Some of them were unpainted, but most of them were very neatly kept, and they had their vegetable gardens. They were not going to starve. They were growing things. The other thing, all these Golden Ring villages had their own craft specialties: lacquer boxes, birch bark boxes, painted brooches, and other jewelry, and eggs. They would be wooden eggs with scenes of Russia painted on them. There are some of them up there. As we traveled along, we came to a seminary. And as the lady was explaining, it was a woman tour guide. One person in the tour asked, he said, Russians were told there is no God, but you have all these beautiful churches in the land. Why weren't they torn down if they didn't want the people to believe there was a God? It makes no point to have the churches. And for all practical purposes, the churches weren't used. But anyhow, he asked this question, and the woman hesitated a moment, and then she said, you know what? The Russian leaders were afraid to tear them down. That's exactly what she said. They didn't tear them down. They were afraid to. Now, I don't know if you can play that Russian music. Did Ben show you how to do it? Trudy. If you can't, okay. But that was... Okay, all right, let it go. I thought maybe he had left it there. We were entertained by a group of seminarians, and Ben had found, this machine won't play the tapes that I brought along back, but he found men that were singing just like I remembered them. They have very deep voices, and it was just a gorgeous concert that afternoon. So sorry you can't hear it. Later on, then in the afternoon, at another village, there were booths set up all along the way, and it was a linen town. They had linen products for sale, and of course, I like to shop, and I saw a tablecloth that I really liked, but the fringes weren't knotted. And so I pointed to the tablecloth, this one, that I liked that one. Oh, no problem, no problem. I fix while you shop. And so she hand knitted the fringe on that tablecloth, the green, all the way around it. Well, I went and did some other shopping and came back for it. So, she was very appreciative that I waited, and she made a sale. This church had an orphanage attached to it. And the poverty of the people in the area was very evident as we came in. All the dishes on the table were cracked. We were kind of hesitant as we came in, and we got used to being there and being with people that were very poor. So in the church, we went from the orphanage room into the church, and there were women with some beautiful, beautiful voices that were practicing, probably 4 services, but all the music we heard was sung a cappella. No musical instruments at all. And we only saw a few children, and I am assuming it was for lack of uniforms because of the poverty. So we saw very few children, but we listened to the women practicing. And I must tell you that Russian churches, you don't sit. You stand for worship the whole time. And actually, the Tsar had a special place to stand. That was all marked for him. If he was going to be at the service, he stood at a certain place. So I don't think we would be too hep on all standing for the whole worship service. But that's the Russian Orthodox Church. You stand for the whole service. As we traveled on, we came to this village, and over the radio, the wagon master says to us, okay, this village coming up has no traffic control. And I mean, no traffic control. So, all of us tighten up, because normally we drove down the road 2 or 3 units at a time. That's the most, because their traffic control ordinarily didn't want a whole van, a string of motorhomes going down the road. So we tightened up. We were going caravan style. And we started going through town. And I mean, there's no way to describe it. If there's no traffic control, there's no traffic control. Everybody. So, we eventually did get stopped because as the traffic went, everybody stopped. And all of a sudden, my door opens. And there's a man standing there, a pretty well-dressed Russian man, and he was motioning to our rigs, and he couldn't speak a word of English. But I finally figured out he wants to know what we're doing here and where we're from. So we had, along with us, small American flags, magnetic things, probably about this big. And I showed him one of those. I actually handed it to him. And he goes, uh-huh. And then he was satisfied, and he closed my door, which I was glad that he did. So he knew where we were from. That may look familiar to you. That is St. Basil's. It is right outside of the Kremlin in Moscow. The Kremlin is a walled-in area, their seat of government, and the Tsar's home. I will show you where the Tsar went to church then, which was inside. I'm sure St. Basil's is just as beautiful inside as the rest of them. Let's see here. That is where the Tsar's family went to church. That was their family church. Baptisms, weddings, anything that you needed the church for, this was the Tsar's home. And the church is called the Church of the Annunciation. Over there on the door, I didn't know where to put it otherwise, is a map of the Kremlin. And you can look at it. Maybe you can find St. Basil's. This church is inside the wall. St. Basil's is just outside the wall. And the other church that is there is Christ the Redeemer Cathedral. Christ the Redeemer Cathedral is a memorial church, and Stalin tore it down. But after the wall came down, they rebuilt it in the 90s. And it is beautiful. There's a picture of it in one of the books up here. It is a very beautiful church. Next, we left Moscow and traveled to Belarus. We traveled through Belarus on our way to Poland, and life was lived at about 1930 style here in the U.S. There were dirt roads and gravel roads. It was just different. They are very poor, and I mean that P-O-O-R with a capital P. But that didn't seem to make them mind. They fed us breakfast for 2 days, a very hearty breakfast. So, this farmer this farmer is taking his milk to wherever he takes it every morning after his milking is done. It looks like a hardtop road. I'm not sure if it is. In the evening, we were camped in a forest grove, and we would have ways to entertain ourselves in the evening. And there would be a peddler that showed up several evenings in a row. He wanted to sell his wares to us, and he had a speech impediment, so we had trouble understanding him. But anyway, this one evening, several women, we decided our husbands needed their hair trimmed. And so one woman was inside her RV. She had a battery operated, and she was trimming her husband up. And I had taken a barber scissors along, which I thought would do for Wilmer. And she looked out at me and she said, "Arlene, when I'm finished with this battery clipper, you may have it to use on Wilmer." And I'm thinking, oh, that'll be really good. Well, about that time, one of the other women, and not this fellow's wife, but there was one man who came when the tour started. Now, we are almost at the end of the tour now. His hair was down on his shoulder. And she's measuring how long his hair was. And she said, "Norm, you need to get Arlene to cut your hair." And I'm trembling. I don't want to cut this guy's hair. Anyway, he said, "Well, okay." So I had no opportunity to say no. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, how long do you want it? How much do you want taken off of here?" So I trimmed it down as far as I could, and then I said, "Okay." And I learned to cut hair. I cut Wilmer's hair all the time. But I learned to cut it, holding it up and trimming it off. And when I started to do that, all the other women started groaning, "She's a beautician." No, I am not. But it was fun anyhow. That was our entertainment that night. So we moved from there on to Brest, which is a town on the border of Poland. And there's a river between Belarus and Poland. The people, our guide was a mother, probably about, I'd say she was about 45. And her daughter had spent a year in the U.S. in high school. Now, this was a few years back, but her daughter received an invitation to come back and visit this family. And she really wanted to go, so they worked real hard on getting all the things that the government of Belarus, which their government seat is Minsk, they got everything they wanted and took it up to them. She was not allowed to go. I mean, it was such a disappointment to her because they worked real hard to get everything that the government wanted, but she did not have a chance to go. Then we moved down toward the river, and we had to wait quite a while to make the crossing into Poland. And there were cleaning women and other residents, and they all wanted to sell us something, which we obliged and bought most of the things because they were selling things for $1. And Wilmer was watching this one woman she was cleaning and she had a bucket of dirty water, and his eyes followed her around, and he said to me, when she comes back over here, you offer her a $1 bill. And I did. She emptied her bucket of dirty water and started walking back toward the other residents. And I motioned to her to come to the window, and I handed her this $1 bill. You have to understand how poor people are, some people. And she looked at that $1 bill, the exchange rate. I cannot imagine. I knew what it was at the time. I can't remember. It was a big exchange rate for $1 American dollar and whatever theirs was. She would have not been any happier if I'd have handed her a $100 bill. This was a $1 bill. And she was just elated. The thing, as far as crafts, wheat weaving, you cannot imagine. I couldn't imagine how beautiful this wheat weaving was. Any of you remember the resident we had here in Londonderry Village for a while? She did wheat weaving. She would have been elated to see those things and to be able to make them. I couldn't buy any because I was afraid it wouldn't get home without being broken, because it was just gorgeous, because they would make baskets, anything. So we crossed over into Poland. And one thing that our guide told us, she said the residents of Belarus go down and stand on the riverbank and look across to Poland. And they say, how can things be so good over here and so bad here? Because they would know how things were in Poland, but it was very bad in Belarus. So you try to explain to them why it's so good in Poland and so bad in Belarus. So now we are in Poland. The Polish people have had it very hard. First the Germans came, and of course they weren't nice to them. And then when the war was over, they happened to be in the Russian zone. And so the Russians took over. And so when the Russians took over, they were smart enough to know that if they did not leave the Poles go to church, they wouldn't be able to control them. So they made a ruling that they could go to church, but everything had to take place, everything that had to do with the church, the schools, clinics, you name it. They preserved the Polish language by having services in Polish. That was the only place they could speak Polish. So they preserved the Polish language, and the children went to school in the church. Now those churches didn't grow. Can you imagine how crowded they were? Because the children were going to school there, the clinics were run there, everything was done in the church. This was during the time that John Paul II was Pope in Rome. And when he visited Poland, he was home and the people loved him. This is Wawel Cathedral, W-A-W-E-L. It's in Krakow. And as you see, there's some, what I want to say, what turns green? Yeah, copper. There's some copper on that roof. And this was the cathedral that they used to anoint their kings, coronate them. This cathedral was a big deal in Poland. Also, every village that we came to would have a statue of the local priest. They were very proud of their priests who did not bend, did not give in. And a lot of them landed in prison because they didn't bend. So when Pope John Paul II came to Poland and he held Mass, the cathedral would not hold them all. No way. They had to hold Mass in the fields outside of Krakow. That was the space they needed. So, not far from Krakow, of course, is Auschwitz. It's not a place that we want to remember, nor do the Poles. We visited there. I don't want to go back there, but I'm glad I was there one time, because it just, sometimes you forget how evil other people can get. So when we were there were platoons of Israeli soldiers, because that's a normal part of their training. They have to go through Auschwitz. So they were in and out of the different places, and they were having prayer services there. The guide we had was a young Polish mother, I'd say in her early 30s, and Wilmer, before he went on tours, he would have his pockets full of Gideon Testaments. And he was very conscious and very polite with them. He'd wait until they were not talking, when they weren't busy, but he'd offer them a testament. And this young woman, he talked to her, and she was, when she was finished giving directions to us, and he gave her a testament. And she did not drop it in her satchel. That testament right in her hand. She used it for a pointer for the rest of the tour. As much as to say, if we'd have all been living by this wouldn't have happened. She was very conscious of what she was showing us. In Auschwitz, there was a room with all shoes, and I mean, the shoes were big like this, and there were tiny baby shoes. There were families in there, babies. So I am remembering October 7th this year. The children were also attacked. The salt mines, which I don't know if any of you have heard of the salt mines. I would suggest if you have a chance to go to Poland and the salt mine, you have a chance to go to the salt mines, go. They're well worth visiting. They had an underground church where they would have mass before the men started to work. But they are beautifully, the figures that are carved out of the salt, they're just beautiful. So, the last place that we went, this is Prague, Czech Republic, and this is St. Vitus Cathedral. Prague is a very beautiful city. A lot of the people that were with us had been to Paris, and they said, Paris can hang its head in light of this city. It's just so beautiful. There is a picture over here of St. Vitus Cathedral. And I think I have some pictures here of the inside. Well, that's the picture that's standing there. St. Vitus Cathedral. That's the inside. Also the inside, another. There. The ceiling is what I wanted to get on that one, the ceiling. Adolf Hitler did not destroy Prague. The wartime was not fun for anyone that lived there. They endured everything else, but he did not destroy the city because he loved to go there. So he didn't bomb it and do the awful things to it that he did to other European cities. I'd say that wasn't a good reason, but anyway. So, that is another picture from Prague. I don't know the name of that cathedral, but you can also take a horse and buggy ride in cathedral in Prague and see it, which is such a beautiful city. So, and I think we're at the end of our journey because from there we went back to Germany and we were home, flew home from there. But Prague was the last stop on our tour. Now, I have some things, you all may want to look at them. I have some books that are mostly pictures. You may sign them out and take them home if I know, if you can bring them back. But look at what we have. I'd like to share.
Arlene,
Yes.
you want to explain what are hung in the hallway, those pictures?
Do I want to?
Did you want to explain them?
The pictures in the hallway.
Are they the same pictures that you have here?
They're the same pictures that are in the hall are the same ones that are on the screen.
Yeah, eventually we're going to have the names on them, so you'll know what you're looking at, because we just got them up, so they would be in time so you could walk along and see them and enjoy them. They're going to be up for the month or so you're going to be okay to take the time, and we'll get them labeled. We have to thank Arlene. This is huge. I mean, that was a lot to bring back from a trip you took a while ago, and remember all these sites and everywhere she was. And such a long trip, don't you think, when you saw? I mean, in campers. That's the part, I can't even envision having my road map and going, okay, no, wait, we're turning left over here. No, I think we go here.
Driving the camper.
Wilmer.
Driving.
He's the driver and the pushing person, the roller.
Driver
And it was a very small motor.
Here, talk here.
They were a little Fiat.
Describe.
I'm sorry. It was a very small motorhome. They were little Fiats. We slept above the cab. And there was no gray water tank, which to my chagrin I kept forgetting, because here in America, your RVs all have gray water tanks and black water tanks. The black water was okay, but I kept forgetting this gray water doesn't have a container. And I'd get yelled at from a neighbor because the water was running out if I was running water in the sink. In the sink.
Arlene, what year did you do this trip?
2004, 2004. You can blame this on Chaplin.
Put it over here. 20, they can hear you. 20,000.
2004, we took this trip. Chaplain Ray was visiting me after Wilmer's funeral sometime, and we got to talking about what we had done, and I showed him these pictures, which were not framed at the time. And he said, "Are you going to frame these?" I said, "Well, I really should." So I did. Hobby Lobby got a good bit of business out of me. But I didn't buy new frames. I went to Jubilee with the measuring tape because I knew what size frame I needed. And I bought frames the right size, and then I took the pictures and the frames. And I went to Hobby Lobby and picked out the mattings.
Very cool. In the back, Bob.
Arlene, the last picture up there, we were looking at that this morning, that sculpture in front of the church. That looks like Jesus walking on the water on the right, and on the left it looks like the disciples rowing a boat. When Jesus
It could be, that's in Prague. Yeah. I don't have my, here it is.
You want this?
This is what you're talking about?
Yes.
That's Jesus.
Yeah. Well, actually in Prague. Actually in Prague, there's a Wenceslas Square. You know the song that the children, and we sing at Christmas time? Good King Wenceslas. Wenceslas Square is in Prague. And that's, and I think it'd be really fun to travel through Prague because Prague is so beautiful. With a horse and carriage. Any other questions?
Would you ever travel that way again? Would you try something like that again?
Sure.
You're good.
I mean, we saw things that most people that go on tours will never see. Yeah.
I wish you would have taken a picture of the vehicle.
I don't know. I'd have to try, find one. It was real small. It was real small. So, I hope you will all come up here, look at the thing.